Welcome. We're going to talk about local first on the desktop. I guess maybe for the topic, it makes sense to zoom out just a little bit and start with some geopolitical context. I think, like us, the people here at these kinds of conferences, have been thinking about technology in a more political sense for a long time. But I think for a lot of people, they realized only recently, like, fuck the Americans, fully control all of our infrastructure, and also they're fascists now, which is not ideal. But also, it sort of creates this moment where like a lot of people who maybe otherwise wouldn't have cared about the kind of stuff we care about now are all about like, oh yeah, whatever, we need to figure out how we actually know where our data is going, and like privacy and whatever, like infrastructure. And this could have been a great moment where like, here's the perfect solution, like switch to free software and solves all these problems. Unfortunately, there's a lot of stuff we don't have at the moment, especially around like mobile and sort of the kind of security stuff that people expect from mobile. You can't really tell people realistically like use this like Fedora laptop instead of their iPhone because we don't have the same kind of offline security. But also like collaborative tools is a very sort of lacking area. Like there's not really like a great alternative to things like Google Docs or whatever, Figma, stuff like that. But I think closer to home, like also even at the system level, like collaboration and like sort of sync across your laptops even isn't a solved problem in our space. And I think in general, like in the free software space, it's full of these sort of almost solutions where it's like OpenStreetMap is theoretically like Google Maps, except it doesn't have an app, and then there are some apps, but they don't have restaurants, and also the routing doesn't work. And it's like, okay. For the general public, that doesn't fully solve the problem, and so they don't care. And I think for some of us, for I don't know, sometime the feeling has been maybe we should be slightly more strategic and like actually push a few of these things fully over the line instead of having 7 implementations of this thing and none of them fully work. And also, I think we need to be serious about the fact that the world has changed, and a lot of the assumptions that we used to make, or I think in some cases are still making, about sort of how stable the world is, like whatever, from geopolitics to supply chains to everything else. And we need to actually be building for that. And I think that is sort of the broad context within which some of us came together as this new structure, which is called Modal Collective. And I think, so in general, it's just like a loose formation of people from various projects, not just GNOME, but also, for example, PostMarketOS, P2Panda, Flatpak, Systemd, various other people. Thinking sort of about broadly across the stack, how can we actually solve some of these problems strategically and sort of in a way that addresses the moment, I guess. And I think for us, that also starts from maybe raising or thinking about our goals a little bit differently. Because I think software freedom has always been a useful frame, and I think it's still a useful frame, but it's the start. It's not like the whole thing. Obviously, you need individual and collective control over the source code, but you also, and I think in GNOME we've always known this, you need stuff to be designed first, because otherwise it's only for nerds. You need to think about accessibility, you need to think about just in general, like sort of who is this actually for, right? But I think nowadays, all these additional questions sort of become extremely relevant, like sustainability and resilience, just the like general brittleness of infrastructure, whether that be supply chains for getting new hardware or like internet infrastructure, and also on a security level, like everything is getting much more dangerous, and we need to be much more paranoid in the design of all our systems. And sort of from like the broad idea is that we want to do something about all of these things from Modal. And we sort of, out of that, catalyze like a few specific goals. One of them is image-based, just because that gives you robustness and security in a way that you can't get otherwise. There's the idea of we actually need a non-Android, non-iOS mobile platform. We need local first sync, because we think that's the only way to like get some kind of practical sync that doesn't depend on gigantic infrastructure things, but we'll get to that later. We want and need old hardware to still work, both for sort of sustainability reasons, but also because of practical reasons. Like maybe you can't get new devices made with whatever sufficient RAM anymore, because now RAM costs €1 billion. And I think all of that sort of comes together as like app ecosystem as the thing that actually makes it viable. Because if you have this great platform and no apps, that's not gonna work either. So I think for us, all of these kind of like work together and support each other. And we're working on various pieces of this over the past year or so. And we're pretty flexible in how to do this. We've done a number of things so far, and we're continuing to do more similar things. Like whether that be development, design, grant writing, just generally organizing people and sort of seeing how we can advance our goals. And sort of we put this in the general frame of like, what if there was a free software iPhone? It's a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but also like we do actually sort of want a thing that has all those properties, that is, supports mobile, has the level of security of an iPhone, is as easy and approachable as an iPhone, but gives you sort of the rights and like whatever ethical properties of the stuff that we make. And the stack for that is not going to be a surprise for any of the people here. It's just a regular sort of GNOME stack. And then maybe the one thing that not everyone knows is P2Panda, which is a local first sync framework that we're going to talk a lot more about. And what we do then in practice is just sort of in existing projects, all of the things you saw there, push things forward that are needed to unblock these goals. Often that takes the shape of just organizing grants. I think whatever, there's a hidden superpower in the filling out forms, and a few of us have gotten pretty good at it. So like, for example, we had this prototype fund thing for reflection last year. We're talking about that today. There's a new prototype fund thing starting last month that's about tooling for immutable operating systems. We were heavily involved with the systemd STF project that's currently ongoing, and there's a not yet announced project about Flatpak that will be announced soon. And for example, like just sort of as a thing that probably is not going to happen, but like we also submitted a Horizon bid earlier this year, which was a very interesting learning experience. Let's let's see if that goes anywhere. But yeah, so this is the kind of thing we're interested in unblocking, because we see them like sort of as an opportunity that we're not really taking in this ecosystem. But yeah, today the talk is specifically multi-device sync, so all the other stuff is a little bit bracketed out. But there, the context is essentially that for the last, I don't know, 15 years or so, like the proprietary ecosystems have had sync and collaboration, and we have not, for the most part, other than like some minor integrations, like there's an online account thing for Nextcloud that is not used anywhere. And I think like there are like various reasons for that, but fundamentally like just the economic structure of like having to run servers and like having admins there, and like with every additional user it gets more expensive. This doesn't make sense for how we build software, how like this ecosystem works. But there have been new developments on sort of a technical and social whatever level in the last 15 years, in that CRDTs, which are like these data types that automatically like merge without stuff breaking, have gotten much better and much faster. Since, I don't know, I guess around 2020 or something, it kind of hit an inflection point. And also peer-to-peer connectivity has gotten much better. And I think those two things together sort of like make a different way of thinking about syncing possible. And then also there's like this whole community of people who like care about local first as a topic that didn't used to exist. It used to be like cloud is the only thing, and I think now people are more aware that actually maybe we need something else. And I think maybe for those not familiar, just a few words about what local first actually means. Essentially, it's the idea that like you always have data on your device. You can always work. You're never blocked by no network being available. But when there is network, you can do sync and collaboration. And then when you come back online, there's a smooth way to actually whatever merge what happened on the different sides. And there's also this general emphasis on like being able to bring your data between one device or one app to another, and like sort of actually owning that data that you create. And so maybe with these new possibilities, actual indie free software collaborative apps are going to be a possibility. For this, I think a helpful example, as usual, is what is Apple doing, and they have something like this, which I think is sort of just as a frame, right? Like as a developer, you don't need to host a server. There's like a storage contingent already. Someone else is taking care of like this whole login account thing, and you as a developer just care about your app and like what data you need to sort of get in and out of the system. And I think that's sort of what you want. I mean, we also want it to work offline. That's maybe not so much a focus for like the proprietary platforms, but I think like that is sort of where we need to come from as a platform. And then apps ideally are just going to have to use a few APIs and they get sync for free. How to get there is a slightly more complicated question for Julian.
So let me figure out the microphone a little bit. I can hear my echo. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how we get there. Because the local first community is mostly composed of researchers, and they build experiments and test software, something which is more interesting to like academics, but not so much interesting for actual users. So we little bit like people get stuck kind of. Can you go next slide?
You have a clicker.
Let's see, which button? Okay. So we're a little bit in a deadlock where we don't really have stable APIs, so app developers can't really use them. But nothing gets stabilized because it doesn't really get used. So it's kind of like a self-rotating problem, and we kind of try to jumpstart it with Reflection, which is a really simple use case. It's text-only collaborative text editor to take notes, like in meetings, where we try to explore a lot of UX concepts for other apps, which other apps can copy. Like for example, like the playing around with like identities, with pet name identities, pseudonyms, which I mean we know them from proprietary solutions, but like linking them to public keys and so on. The project was funded by NLNet and Prototype Fund over the last couple of months, couple of years almost. And for the current state of the project, it's a simple text editor. It uses GTK. It fits well in the desktop. The networking collaboration just works. Like you install an app and then you can join documents. Like you need to know the document ID, which we call topic, but that's like more a technical term, which is just a hash. It's published on FlatTop Beta, and we have experimental macOS builds, which we also like. This project we also a little bit try to use as a testing ground, like to get GTK integration for macOS, like to test it out. It works, but it has its caveats. We didn't do a stable release yet because we kind of want to wait that the entire or the stack a little bit matures. And while working on Reflection, we figured out a couple of problems that we're going to talk about later. But first, we're going to do a quick demo. We tried to do one last year at GUADEC, but we didn't manage to do the demo during 10 minutes or 5 minutes lightning talk. Oh, I can.
You need to tab over there.
Oh, yeah, sure, but you need to show some more.
Right, yeah, you can tap on both things. And this is all the whatever people who are connected. One of them is the device that whatever we were using before. So I guess for some reason this one is never seen. And here you can like share the ID, and then that's what you enter on the other side. And you can select stuff, and if you select stuff,
if I select stuff,
it also works.
It's blue because I'm blue bear, so.
Right, it actually has the color of the user.
It's the GTK default selection color, but I'm blue bear. It's not because of GTK.
Wait, do you want to see more?
You can. You can.
If you go back, you see the documents, but here there's only one.
You can create a new one.
Create a new one. That's what I wanted to do. We're already like very tight on time.
Yeah, I definitely don't want to open
another
my
document. All right.
Oh, I have to click here. So another thing we also worked on, it was also to improve the developer experience. So we actually give tools to app developers so they can build their own sync capabilities into their own app using Peter Panda, which is like the network stack we're using. It's built on top of Iro, which is a peer-to-peer network written in Rust. So the GObject bindings are introspectable, so they can be used by, we can create bindings, and so they can be used by whatever language you want. We already have bindings for Python, JavaScript, Vala, which I think are untested, but this should work. We don't have Rust ones, which would be nice, so you don't have to statically link to against Peter Panda and the entire stack. You just have it installed on your system and can dynamically link to it. So what GObject bindings do for now is wrap the high-level Peter Panda API, which has some limitations for now, which I'm going to talk a little bit about later. So if you want, in like 50 lines of code, you can add sync capabilities to your app. And if you are a maintainer of an app or want to create a new app, I invite you to try it out. And we already had some developer outreach, like at different events. We did small workshops where we tried to build in a few hours some app that uses the networking stack. For example, in Berlin, I think, at Botting the Ocean, Adrian and other people, I wasn't there, built a simple tic-tac-toe app game across the network with sync capabilities using Peter Panda. So they managed to do that in 2 hours, 1 hour. We also had one online for clipboard sharing, but those are pretty fun. Okay, I thought we were gonna talk about it. And during the project, we also, like during the project of reflection, we also researched different areas. Especially like there are a lot of things which usually are done by a server, by a single point, a third party, like authentication, encryption, access control is just done by one single entity. So it's fairly easy to resolve. But in a peer-to-peer network or in a local first stack, we have some tricky questions. What happens if nobody's online? So if you do some changes to a text, like in the case of reflection, you do some changes and then log off or turn off your computer, go out of the office, call your coworker and tell them, can you look at my changes? And then they can obviously not, because you didn't sync with them because they were not online. They were maybe not working at the same time as you. So it's pretty annoying. And that happened to us fairly commonly, where initially we didn't really think that would be a problem. We came up with a solution for it. It's we call it support nodes, where it's quite different than a normal server in like the classical proprietary solutions, where you often have a single unencrypted database where each node or each device talks to the server and syncs just between the server. In our case, is that the support nodes are essentially a device like any other, except they don't have any access to the data, and as for them, it's only a binary blob, and nodes can, instead of downloading it from a different peer on the network, they just download it from the support node directly, which so as I said, each support node only gets encrypted data, so there's not much metadata exposed. There's no lock-in because the server is really easy. There's no logic in there. It doesn't do anything with the data. It's just plain storage, basically. And therefore, it's also really easy to move between different providers. You just need storage somewhere and a way to request it. Also, you can have multiple support nodes directly, because they're just different locations where the same data is stored, and it's fairly straightforward. And since it's so easy, like it's just essentially a file storage, or you store binary blob, it's really easy to self-host. There is no complexity. You don't need a hugely powerful machine which does calculations or anything. And oh, did I turn it off? Yes, I did. So we also did some mockups on how it would look in matrix in reflection. So you add a support node with a known address, and then you have like information on how many devices use that support node. Maybe you have a paid subscription, so it's going to expire in 8 months. And essentially, like in the UI, it feels fairly similar to a normal user, except it's a bot. It's an automatic thing which doesn't have access to the data, but it feels still behaves fairly similar to nodes. A different question is, how do I log in? There is no login. Your identity is basically a public key. It's a public key, which makes it much more tricky to verify that you're actually talking to a specific person, because you don't have a third party guaranteeing you that you talk to that specific person. So impersonation and text becomes a real concern. So we need to encourage in-person verification. And we're thinking about having, since users are not really good at reading hashes or random byte strings, like maybe you guys are pretty good at that, but I'm not. So we have pseudonyms like Yellow, Flamingo, which are fun, like they're joyful and they're auto-generated from the public key. But in addition, we also add or think about adding a pet name system. So it's a user-defined, like you have your own address book and you define the name of a specific user, and not the other user tells you their name. So it's a little bit more privacy protective. If we look like at the UX for this, Tobias, I think, came up with this idea, which I kind of like, because I worked on Fractal in the past with Matrix, where user verification is an important thing. But like Tobias came up with the solution that in order to store a contact and give them a pet name, you need to verify them in some out-of-band way, like either in person or via phone call or whatever you want to do. But it's like it gives a really strong incentive that you verify them and then you can store them. So it's just part of the flow to verify a user. One more thing which we were thinking, because like the bigger idea is have like a platform API for syncing. What does it mean? We also need context, like how do you identify devices? You don't want to offload that to the app developer. So one of the major things is having a context portal, which provides the context for the application. So the application asks for a contact, and then the user provides it through the portal. And in Plus, since it's one single location, like the server, like the system provides the context, you can also have a backend which uses Peter Panda or whatever peer-to-peer network, or even Nextcloud or whatever you want, to sync across your own devices, your contact list, and you expose always the same API to the app. So let's look at some mockups Tobias created. Is that the app has a list of contacts for, like, this is in the case of reflection. You have like the collaborators for the document, and then you add a new one. You get the portal, like here on the right side, your right side. You get a list of contacts, or maybe even a group of contacts, and you share those contacts with the app. And the nice part is that then in contacts we can expose information like which app is using which contacts. Like for example, Jan Hendricks is in 12 shared documents using Reflection, or 3 shared presentation in Podium, like information like this, because it's all like the contact itself is gathered on a platform level. One other tricky question is, how do we remove old devices? Like you have a set of devices, how do you remove one? Because if it's offline, how do you tell a device that's offline that it should remove itself from the network? Like it doesn't listen to you, it's offline. And there it comes, access control comes in, which right now Reflection doesn't really support. Like it doesn't support it yet because we didn't get around to it, but the Peter Pan stack has it already. So what happens when I come back online? Oh, it's your turn.
Oh, it's my turn. All right. I was gonna take a
You have
photo,
a mic,
but
you have a
my
microphone.
phone storage is full, and I wasn't able to clear. This is why we need to be better at handling scarce resources. All right. So yeah, another sort of interesting question, especially with all this fancy merging stuff, is what do people actually expect when they go offline for a week and then they made some changes and then they come back online? And we did a bit of research, and it turns out they're very confused and they don't know what to expect. And I think like sort of what no one expected is it will just work out. They all expected like, oh, whatever, it will delete one of the two sides, or like I'm gonna have to manually approve all the changes and so on. And I think the UX difficulty comes on top of the technical difficulty. And I think there's a lot of unexplored territory here because not a lot of apps are shipping with these kind of CRDT merging strategies yet. And whether or not like that is actually the UX you want to expose, or whether you want to like have that under the hood for when you need it, but then actually like do a more explicit merge strategy, maybe in most cases, is kind of an open question. And it probably also depends on the app and the domain. Maybe in some cases you just don't care. In other cases you like whatever, show a literal diff on two sides or something. And we did experiment with that a little bit. But I think this is basically like a whole research project all by itself, sort of how you basically do some basic git merge kind of things for non-developers, or maybe none of that at all. Like maybe, yeah, you somehow find a way to like make it palatable to people that magic will happen. But yeah, tricky. Another thing that came up quite a bit in just like testing and using the app is that currently, like sort of each topic, which is like a network, is tied to one document. But in practice, often you have like more like a group that has multiple documents. So in the Reflection case, we had like our notes document, we had our roadmap document, we were drafting some blog posts. And so actually we had like maybe 5 to 15 documents. And so then it becomes quite annoying to add all the same people to the same documents. So something we experiment with a little bit UX-wise is like maybe you move the network up one layer and then you sync a whole folder and people can just add stuff to the folder and then it automatically syncs between the same people. But yeah, that's just a design idea for now. Another sort of interesting but experimental idea is I think people like sort of files on their regular file system a lot because they can do all the normal file operations with them. You can back them up, you can like send them via some other method, you can like just make sure that you will be able to read them forever because it's just a markdown file. But the way like whatever local first works is you have operations and you like have you need to have an actual database in the app to do this stuff. But what we could maybe do is just like write out like the state from the database to a folder of files and have that not be sort of the source of truth, but like sort of just write out to it so it's at least accessible. And potentially we could even like read changes from those files when like whatever something was changed while the app wasn't open, and you just make those operations in like sort of on behalf of that user. There are a lot of weird edge cases probably, and I'd be curious to talk to people who know more about file system APIs. When we were at Linux App Summit, Ada was already like, not sure, but I don't know. I think it would be interesting to explore, because I think the sort of benefits would be real, and if there's some in between thing we could do where even if it's just a read-only directory, that'd be great. Right. Sorry, already skipped that. And another fun one is deleting stuff, because you know you have people who can be offline for long periods of time, but then you have other people who want to delete the thing right now, and there's sort of the trade-off. Like, do you want to make sure it's deleted right now on this one device that you happen to have because the cops are at the door, or do you want to make really sure it is deleted everywhere, but then you need to keep a reference at least or something around for, I don't know, potentially very long, because people might not come online until next year. And so like there's a trade-off that maybe you need to negotiate, not even just like based on a domain, based on the use case and the specific moment. We've also thought about like maybe making some documents ephemeral, where only one person actually has the document long term, and people sort of ephemerally connect to like type together right now, and then at the end of the session it disappears. I don't know. But yeah, like with a lot of this stuff, I think this would be a research project on its own as well. This is just like sort of the idea of like maybe you can choose between sort of delete right now and keep around, but like tell everyone to delete essentially. Right. Next things.
So let's talk a little bit about what's the next things we want to work on, or we already working on, or the Peter Pan people are working on. So one of the things we want to do is integrate access control and entry encryption in the high-level API. So app developers, reflection as well, can easily use it, because now it's a little bit lower level API, which is more complex to use, but you could use it, but it's a little bit annoying. Implement support nodes, like actually build a standalone binary you can run on a server. The contacts portal, which the Peter Pan people are also exploring ideas, and there is some investment in that. I think there's an NL grant. The Peter Pan people also work on the mesh routing, which will be useful for Bluetooth and low LoRa. And obviously, like the big one is like having a stable release 1.0, sorry, of Peter Panda. So we actually can guarantee that you're not going to lose your data if you use Peter Panda or reflection. What are the things you can do right now in using the Peter Panda and the networking stack? And the things we can add also to reflection as well, like the concepts we already thought about but didn't got around to work on, is having cheap headless support nodes, like just run basically reflection in on a server without running the UI. Grouping documents into a single topic, where we have like each document is a topic, which is just a hash, and we can just use one hash or one topic to identify multiple documents, which is pretty easy. So the only information in that document would be the address to all the documents. Export diffs to a file. Export a document to file, and then re-import diffs into reflection and submitting them over the network as changes made by the user directly inside the app. Adding client-side pet name identities, which we don't have right now, but that's very trivial to add. You just store them in a local database. They're not shared with other devices or users, so it's trivial to add. Here, another mock-up where you have just a design team, which is a collection of documents. It's a team with multiple documents, which makes it a little bit easier to join a bigger team. Like, for example, for reflection, for our meetings, we had like, I don't know, 5, 6 documents. and it just gets really messy if you need to join all of those. Something we want to keep doing is doing small workshops. We kind of had the idea to build something similar to airdrop using just MDNS for discovery on a local network. So which simplifies a lot of stuff. So you don't need a bootstrap node, which is used to look up other peers and create the network effect or the network itself. It doesn't really need access control because like the threat model is local network, like everybody on the local network is allowed to, is a good actor. That's kind of the threat model. You don't really need data migration because you send a file at one point and then it doesn't matter anymore. You don't really need support nodes because it's on a local network. You're sending the data instantly. And we're going to try to build it with your help if you want to join on Monday afternoon, right after lunch. Oh, that's going to be difficult. We're going to try to build this app in less than in 2 hours with a GTK app, like with the GTK user interface. So feel free to join. It's gonna be fun. There's no particular language required. I guess we're gonna pick the language based on the number of people there. We are way too late. There's gonna be a BOF on Sunday to talk about the system integration and the context portal. Please come if you're interested in it. And then we have some takeaways from Tobias, which he has 1 minute.
Last words. Right. So I think, as you've seen, it's very early for this entire ecosystem. But I think something that I really realized being at Local First conference last weekend is it's early not just for us. It's even earlier for everyone else. I think we're in some ways even ahead of this because we've already been thinking about it for a little while, and we've actually tried some stuff. So I think this could actually become a really cool thing that sort of we're maybe doing before some other people. And yeah, in general, if you're interested in this kind of bleeding edge, researchy, whatever, experiment stuff, please join us because there's a lot of cool stuff to do. And especially if you're an app developer, start prototyping. This is the perfect time. Obviously, if you know Rust and are interested in text editing, we would love it if people looked at reflection and maybe implemented some of the ideas that we already sort of have designs for. But also just like building a little game or like implementing it in an app that you already have just as an experimental branch. I think there's a lot of cool stuff we could learn from that. Just like submitting feedback, whatever, if you find weird issues with the bindings or something, that'd be super helpful. And if you really want to get into it, both P2Panda and the P2Panda bindings always need more contributors. These are some links where you can get involved, but also just if you're around, ask us, we're happy to help. Thank you so much. Yeah, I don't think we have time for questions, but maybe find us afterwards.